May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. Today we have a guest, Ned Hoke. Ned came to California to check out Esalen Inst like in 65 or something like that, you know. And he liked it, but they said he wasn't quite ready yet. So I went out and got a Volkswagen bus and came back and, started at the bottom there and ended up being, an instructor, and he studied fine cabinetry with Art Carpenter in Bolinas. We talk about Bolinas a lot at the very first. And I used to live in Bolinas. Katrinka used to live in Bolinas, and Ned still does. Bolinas is a little hidden community north of San Francisco in Marin County, in case you don't know. You know, while Ned was at Esalen, he... Shunryu Suzuki went over there and gave a talk, and he got interested in that, and he started coming over and being a student at Tassajara in the summers. And he was involved in moving the stone up to the mountain, up to the hogback. That was Shunryu Suzuki's headstone for, the ashes site there. So we talk about that because there's various accounts of what happened there, and some of them aren't accurate. And so anyway, we talk about all that. And Ned became a acupuncturist. He recently retired during COVID from 40 years of acupuncture, but then he sort of missed it, so he's back doing it on a more limited basis. So as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, we'll give Ned Hoke a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate, or whatever, for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll give Ned Hoke a call.
It says Indonesia. Could be you.
That's true. And
Great.
how you doing?
Well, so far so good. So here we are.
Yeah, indeed.
So, how would you like to do this? I mean, give me your format.
It's no format, and we're already recording.
Okay.
And so, Ned, are you in Bolinas? Where are you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh my God, still in Bolinas. How is Bolinas?
It's what can I tell you? It just doesn't seem to go away, Bolinas. I'm seemingly doing okay, despite all that could be complained about. Bolinas doesn't seem to be enormously different than when you lived here, other than there seems to be more people with lots of resources, and they're buying up, property, that kind of thing. And of course, the generation of which you and I are part are dying, of course, and there's some of that, and so there's a fairly regular half-mast flag at the fire station or something rather, where somebody we know has wandered off this mortal coil, which is how that is, and the other thing that I think is refreshing for me in a way is to see the number of relatively sort of 30s and 40s year old people with kids, and so you get a chance to feel the freshness of youth, which, gosh, it's really nice to be around that enthusiasm, and of course it keeps the schools open and it keeps the teachers employed, but it's also just the freshness of young people. It's a real blessing.
Yeah. I do not want to live with all people my age and are near my age.
Right.
That's great to hear. I remember Orville Shell wrote that book, the town that fought to save itself, and it really has. It has just. Mm-hmm. I can't think of any place that is in the United States that I know of that is more the same. Wow, that's great.
No, I certainly know what you mean, obviously, and it's interesting that phrase comes up, periodically. People, then they complain about it. They say, well, we saved it, but then look, we've got this specialness about us, which can be a little bit, breathless, you might say, or we can feel a little too proud of ourselves. And there was for instance, just in the Hearsay News, which I'm sure you remember, our little local announcement thing, and there was it was reported this last couple of days ago that there were these kids on RCA Beach. I'm sure you remember where that is.
Oh yeah.
On RCA Beach, and they were taunting people from out of town and kind of talking to them as if they somehow didn't belong here. And God, that wrought up a rage of people who said, "This is awful. We have these young people who are so privileged that they think that somehow that this privacy thing that we've got and this special Brigadoon kind of town that we've got somehow makes us better in some way, or makes us able to look down our nose at other people and no, we can't, and
right.
And so there is a certain amount of to me, if extra specialness about the whole damn thing, which is, I grew up in a class-based world, which was just annoying to me big time, and I hate to be part of it anywhere at all, because it's such a nonsense, and of course to see it coming out in young people, that's not so good.
Yeah, well, pretty unavoidable.
Yeah.
And it is a town that would not allow the governments to put up a sign indicating where the town was.
Well, but of course now with MapQuest or with Google Drive or whatever it is, there's no hiding, and the sign could go up or not, or it's all a different world. And
right.
Another thing that's really different, David, that I think you would notice if you were to come, is that the town has been discovered in a big time way, and so that's part of what is a pressure for a lot of local people, particularly people downtown, because of course they get the jamming of particularly weekends, of course. But there's this feeling of there's kind of too many people, not infrequently, and you go downtown and go, oh, I don't want to be here. This is like halftime of the football game, in a way.
Yeah.
All jammed up with people kind of rubbernecking and which is of course good for the people who have the restaurants and the local store and the bar and so on like that. But for those of us who've been here a long time, it's we kind of wish they would find some other place to be fascinated with.
Yeah,
you know, but,
yeah.
You know, but that's we're as close as to San Francisco as we are. You know, that what can you expect?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that sort of tension between the people who own stores downtown and the
Right.
isolationists, what was always there. But
Right.
I can remember that well. And Smiley's still open. I'm sure, and claiming to be
Well,
what?
it's under the management of a new gal who bought it from Don Bean,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a different animal. I mean, it doesn't have it's lost all that kind of what do I want to say? There's that kind of it always seemed to me to kind of have a sort of a heavy kind of beer joint kind of place to it, you know, and
Yeah.
the people that hung out there were kind of people that hang out at bars, you know, and it's just sort of not my scene pretty much. And so I guess maybe that's a smart ass thing to say, but it didn't seem attractive to me. And now they've this gal who has taken it over and has developed the motel part of it in a very, you know, kind of yuppie kind of way, you might say, but at the same time it provides, you know, places for people to stay, and it's the visual place is much fresher. The paint is fresh. The feeling is fresh. You can go there now and not feel like you're just hanging out with a bunch of barflies.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, right.
Does it still have a sign that says, or I don't know if there was a sign says it was the
the oldest bar in
California.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Excuse me. Hey, I have to say excuse me when I cough because then I can search for excuse me in the artificial intelligence generated transcript and take out the coughs.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it claimed to be the longest continually running bar in California and claimed to be running since like 1850.
Right. There has been some pushback about that.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's some place up in Marshall, and then there's another place in somewhere in the mountains somewhere that said baloney bar. But you know, it doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't
sure.
Matter. It's obviously it's true enough that it's a very, very, very long running.
Yeah.
You know, 1850 whatever, and so of course it's so really nice to go now to walk past it and to see they've done this summer particularly. They did a lot of outdoor right to the side of it. There's a stage that they put up, and then there are these bands doing different things, and people are really, really enjoying sitting out in front and, you know, and having that outdoor experience of all kinds of music, just all different kinds, and enough space for the local bands to kind of do their thing, but also people, you know, really significant people from other places. They come and so it's a gift to the community to have such nice music.
It's wonderful, and it's wonderful. There's still an open space there. Wow, that's great.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I really appreciate that. That where I live, open space is not protected, and there's no building codes and no stopping anyone from doing anything. And even if they pass
you're
laws,
in Thailand, right? You're in Thailand, correctly?
No, I'm in Bali.
Oh, Bali. I meant to say, Bali, right? Bali.
Yeah.
And so, but Bali is Bali a town or Bali an island? Isn't it?
Island.
Island. How big an island is it?
It's the size of Sonoma and Marin.
Oh, okay. What's the population?
I kind of think it's around 4.5 million.
Oh, so a lot of people.
Yeah. It was. I noticed. I was reading a book about the mid '60s when so many people were massacred in Indonesia and Sukarno fell. It called Bali an overpopulated island. And so is Java. Java was the most densely populated place on Earth. Really? I remember reading at school, like in 1960. But so I guess Bali is like that too, but it doesn't seem like it. Just we're in the population centers, but in the country, I don't know. Anyway, so that's all really interesting to me. It's great to hear all that. Well, what are you up to? How are you doing?
Well, what can you say? 40 years in Sonoma Valley, I was an acupuncturist, so to speak. And so, I mean, what I did is I had been an Esalen person. I was in Esalen. I lived in Esalen for a couple of years, and I spent a couple of years being an Esalen workshop leader and taught all kinds of places, at Yale University, among other places. And then I decided I got to do something with my life. So then I did an apprenticeship with Art Carpenter.
Oh, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, and then I realized I didn't want to eat dust the rest of my life. So I went to medical school in China, and then I went to medical school in England, and all kinds of things. And so that ended up turning me into a doctor. So basically, I was a doctor for 40 years in Sonoma Valley. I kept my house in Bolinas. Sonoma was a little too hot for me. I didn't want to totally surrender to selling my place here in Bolinas. So anyway, for 40 years I was in Sonoma, and then along came the pandemic, and the state shut me down briefly. And I thought, what a great moment to get out of town, basically. So I decided to retire, about 3 years ago, I guess it would be, and then 6 months or so ago, I realized I still kind of missed the work that I'd been doing before, and I could use also the income. So I fired up my old skills, and I have a small practice in Sonoma and an even smaller practice here in Bolinas. That's kind of what I'm doing. I'm a part-time acupuncturist, and I don't know if you know the property that I'm on, but it's an endless chore to manage this property. So I spend a lot of time doing that.
Where are you?
Well, did you know Hal Chase, the house that Hal Chase built on Grove and Poplar? Did you, or were you aware of those? I think you were a little bit after that. I think when you were here, what years were you here in Bolinas?
I was there from 76, about March to 85 March.
Right. Well, chances are then you missed what what I was about to say. Okay, so I actually bought this property, the first part of the property. I bought it in 1974, and basically what it was it was a nightmarish of a half finished building, and I not having anything better to do, and also having just inherited this tiny little chunk of change from my great aunt, I had this down payment, so I decided to buy this house and work on it. Well, I didn't know then that 50 years later I'd still be working on it. Oh, shit.
Oh, that's funny.
But, yeah. So anyway, it's right at the edge of the mesa, and I'm right across the street from the bottom edge of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. I can see the ocean out my window. I mean, it wasn't quite as pristine as where you were living down with Liz down right by the water.
Yeah.
But it's still a kind of it's an ocean view property, and I always thought it would be great to fix it up, and I don't know what, I didn't really have a good plan. So.
Well, it sounds ideal to me. I know where you were.
Well, it works.
Yeah, I know where you are.
It works.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
So tell me about how this work is, how this work with Cuke and going on. Tell me about that part. I mean, because I gather that's part of what we're going to talk about, and we really haven't talked much about it other than very fleetingly. Do we want to talk about that, or we talk about something else if you like? But I mean, I guess it's when I signed into it again just to sort of try to update myself. And I went, as I looked at it, I thought, this is nice work. This is, and it's a collection of things and feelings and thoughts and insights, and that I look at it and I go, this is worth doing. This is worth remembering these things. This is remembering and honoring this individual, but it's also honoring those of us who were able to be part of it.
That's right.
And so I felt very gratified that you had done what you've done with it, and that you apparently continue to do.
Yeah. It's a guy who made that documentary on D.T. Suzuki lives. Michael Goldberg lives in Tokyo. He said Japanese have a word for what you're doing. So they call it life waka. Understand that? Life work. Life waka. Because I've been involved with it pretty intensely since about, I don't know. I mean, I started writing Thank You and Okay in about 88. Right. But been a lot of other stuff happening. Sure. And I've had a lot of help. It represents, I've collected work other people have done, and also there's a guy named Peter Ford who has, he's the managing director of Cuke Archives now, and I'm on special projects. And he's the brains of it. The organizing and just every aspect, just wonderful. And Wendy Piercig has been helping. We're always working on Suzuki Roshi lectures. She focuses on that, doing the light edits and always going over even the verbatim and stuff. There's no end to it. But
how? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. I was just going to say, I wanted to get back to you.
Okay. Go ahead, as you will, sure.
Yeah, but you had some question.
Well, I guess I was wondering really how the current Zen Center world embraces what you've done, and is there an active dialogue that you're having with the current whoever the current people are in City Center or that kind of thing? Have they embraced your work pretty well? And are you in a way where you part of what you are doing and has some sort of dynamism that connects with them in an active way at all? Or say something about that if you would.
Well, Zen Center as an organization ignores it.
Okay.
Doesn't I came out with a new book of vignettes on Suzuki Roshi. They didn't, took the old ones, which is now Zen Right Here and there's Zen Right Now, and Shambhala made them a matching set and stuff. Oh, and I tried to get it on their Sangha News, but they wouldn't put it on it. But they really? They do books about other subjects, but came out with audio book for Crooked Cucumber. Actually, it's second edition. It's all there's a lot of work on it, and an audio book on Thank You and Okay. They don't mention that, but individuals. I have a lot of contact with individuals, but it's not institutional. You know what I mean?
Well, no, absolutely. It's very much non-institutional is probably a good way of saying it as any. I mean, as far as I can tell, I have my very, very limited contact. But so, do you feel neglected in some way by the institutional environment, or is it? Do you have is there something going on there that?
Well, it's okay. As long as I get by, and people learn about it. But Zen Center is an institution, and it promotes itself. And it's all once you're working for an institution, everything is geared toward helping the institution to survive, to continue. And so, Q card.
Okay, well that sort of says a lot, actually, because it doesn't surprise me, and I have always sort of stayed away from Zen Center because to me the institution part of it just was unattractive to me, and it didn't seem to be germane to the things that drew me to Suzuki Roshi, the person, or the practice for that matter. I mean, and for instance, you probably remember Layla Brockhorst.
Oh yeah.
And I for the last couple of years I've been part of her sitting group.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah. And I was really charmed to. I don't know if you remember Patty Bradford. Probably you do.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, Patty had been a member, and she sort of, during the COVID thing, she sort of kind of said, "Well, why don't you join and sit with us?" Because she knew that. She used to come down and sit with Liz, and I was, I was part of that too, So anyway, so she said, "Why come on, be with Layla," and it was such a delight because Layla, what she did with her group was what a meticulous, thoughtful person who would pull together things that were writings from whoever, some Zen wisdom person, and she'd send us copies of these things, and then we'd get a chance to visit about them during or after our sitting and that kind of thing. So we had a little class kind of thing, and she brought her sort of Montana honest basicness to the purpose of studying the Zen principles. And so she was to me a wonderful companion to just to have a group part practice with. But anyways, where I'm going with that is that besides refreshing or talking about Layla, which is a nice thing, and I don't know, I never would have been able to spend hardly any time with the institutional thing of Zen Center. It just never drew me in. But the thing is that with you, I guess somehow I think of you as somehow so much a part of the I don't know, the elemental part of the basic of the what am I trying to say? I think of you as an elemental part of the scene, I guess, and I guess somehow to not honor you. I'm sorry that the institution doesn't seem to have room for you in the way that it might.
Oh no. It doesn't matter.
What sort of sense do you have of who's listening to what you're putting out into the world?
I don't know. So a lot of people from the Zen world, from other worlds. I figured several thousand people a day interact with Q archives, and that's fine. And
that's a lot.
Yeah. It's relative.
Well, sure, but it just speaking in favor of your work, that it pleases me that it's receiving that level of attention. I mean, I guess as somebody who had a radio show in a small town in Northern California, I never had the slightest knowledge of who was actually listening. And every so often I'd get a phone call or something like that, or people would stop me in the street and they said they heard my interview with some important person. But I mean, you've got apparently a steady sense of presence in the world with what you're doing, which sounds like great. I mean, to me, it sounds like it's and so if it's not impolite to ask, when you think when you think yourself in terms of what Suzuki Roshi has said, either to you or to the world, what are you hearing that still seems to reach way inside you and give you something that is special that Suzuki Roshi is able to do? What can you say something about that? Because I don't think we've ever had a chance to say those kinds of things to each other, and I don't know. I mean, here you are doing this, fabulous, big, wide, compilation of everything. But just between you and me and whoever's listening, and maybe it's not even words. Maybe there's no words to what I'm asking in terms of. But given that you're around this material as much as you are, what are you still hearing?
Oh, he didn't have any one particular teaching. It could. It's just I see every day. I get a little bit, from his lectures or stories that people tell, and I frequently go, "Oh yeah, I forgot about it. Oh well, yeah, that's a wonderful point. Oh yeah, that's so cool." I'd say what I really like about it is that there's nothing you can put your finger on and say this is it. It was very lacking in systemization, but he emphasized like I want to say things he said over and over, but be yourself. Right. Are like is attributed to Oscar Wilde, but it's not. It's attributed to him, but nobody knows where. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken.
That's a good line.
You tell me. I don't know. I basically. I think forgetting it all and experiencing the depth of yourself is what it is. Mm-hmm. It's not really him. It's you. You know what I mean? So I think he was just really consistently teaching from very, very many points of view and different ways of looking at it. But what it all came down to was, excuse me, was I think when he'd say, I like he'd say, I don't really believe anything, or he'd say there is no absolute truth. There's no one truth. He said, he'd say, well, maybe karma, He'd say karma. So karma was that cause and effect. So what I really appreciate is not having any teaching to hold on to. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And freeing oneself from beliefs, but, freeing oneself from attachment to self, of course, is fundamental to his teaching and to Buddhism. But you tell me, I want to hear what you have to say on that.
I spent about 5 minutes before you called, and I downloaded some of the things that I had said in written material to you, just to read, to remind myself of what I had said, and what makes me glad to have said them at the time I did was it, and happy that somebody was there to hear it, should we say, is it reminds me of how profound an impact that period of my life was, and how Suzuki Roshi was a central player in that dynamic. And so it was, and what I said to you back then in 2012 or whenever, that's what I got in front of me anyway. And then subsequent years, going to the grave site, and there's the big stone that Bob Walter and I dragged up the hill, and I got a chance to bow in front of that and to feel that fellowship again. And I have to admit, I do. When I walk up that path up to the grave site there at Tassajara, I do feel a fellowship that is something that I don't feel really anywhere else in the world, really. And so it's as though, for me, Roshi was some kind of a primary primal teacher for me, and I got permission to be really alive, and permission to really take a proper place in life that I didn't feel as privileged to do before I was around him. I mean, he opened up a privilege to be fully alive, and to but in a way that wasn't full of ego, that wasn't full of accomplishment, particularly, that wasn't full of a lot of things that I grew up to believe that if you were really fully alive, well, then you sort of had to have these other pieces to it, these other successes and so on. And Roshi gave me a feeling that I didn't have to have any of that. Is that there was enough purpose in just being alive in the natural state that I was good enough, and that's quite a blessing. Mm. And of course, not for me in the case not having had children, and still to this day not having children, and not creating a family, which is all those things that you're supposed to do, basically, and not being a particularly successful business person, or having in my case, my father was very big on being important in the world, and I haven't I haven't managed to live up to that requirement either. And so Roshi gave me permission to be alive in a way that was very unusual, and I would have never expected it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, that's and so what I read, what I said to you, that reminds me of all that, and it says that, and also there was a mystic quality for me with Roshi. Roshi literally, as I wrote to you, I said when we'd sit and listen to his lectures at Tassajara, his voice was coming right in my center. I mean, I wasn't hearing the voice from across the room. I was listening to a voice that was deep inside of me. And it was just amazing, just absolutely amazing to have this not really hollow, but this space that was just filled with both the voice, but also the presence. So it wasn't just the words, but it was the presence of the teaching, and that was a great gift, to sort of have a mystical fellowship, and I felt that not infrequently. And then as I wrote to you also, after he died, and had this amazing experience of walking by his wife in the Zendo, Oksan, and the first time I saw her, my body was just overwhelmed with grief. I'd never felt grief like that, ever. And I was just walking along in Kinhin, and so I walked around again. And then the next time I walked by her, my body just firmed up, and my back got straight, and I felt a joy inside. I'd had this moment of grief that I'd somehow transmitted with her, or I mean, I don't know what it was, but it was so strong. And then suddenly it was gone, and then the grief was lifted, and I was then back in fellowship with, I don't know if it was Roshi or with myself or with Oksan or whatever, but it was one of those validation things, and that was really remarkable for me. and that was one of them. And then the last one that I probably should just to keep jabbering about, but
no, please do.
I remember jabbering about. Anyway, so there I am, and I'm walking into the Zendo, and I look down, and there's Roshi's, where Roshi's had walked. There were these circles of light, and I went, "Oh my God!" I'd heard somewhere, I'd read somewhere that your teacher will do that. I mean, your teacher will show you the light of you will see light where he was. I'd read that somewhere, I guess, but there it was, right in front of me, and I went, "Oh my God, I'll be darned!" Nothing was happening. I mean, it was just walking into the Zendo, but it was a quite striking and a kind of validating feeling for me, because I had, combined with that inner sense of his voice was coming from my very deepest center. That kind of validated all that, and went, okay, I'm definitely his student, and I definitely received some kind of a transmission from him, and I feel, whether it's a fellowship thing or whatever, I feel like I've been now part of whatever this teaching is, in a way that Zen Center could never give me. I mean, or wouldn't be interested in giving me, for that matter. But I mean, it was completely mystical, really, and so
excuse me,
it was lovely. Yeah. So that's kind of what I wrote to you before, and but I've just repeated again. So if that's of interest to your listeners, okay, great.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to ask you about the circles of light. Would you describe that?
Well, it's hard to say. I don't remember it that well, but it was just a fairly short moment. It was like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but like when I would be there in the summer at Tassajara, I'd always ask to be whacked with the stick. And it was just sort of a completely normal thing for me. And it was like something. It was like a joining together with Roshi. And then, and so to be close to him physically was a special thing. And one of the ways I accomplished that was to lean forward and ask for the whack on my back kind of thing. Well, then somehow I'm just stumbling around with this, but then it was I remember it was a dark evening or a dark afternoon probably, and I just happened to be very following him in for some reason or other. I mean, I was right there immediately in front of me, and there I looked down at the earth, and I forget I don't think it was earth. I think it was the Zendo wooden floor kind of thing. And there were these. It was like circles were about the size of, maybe the size of a small, sort of a half-size soccer ball, and they were hollow in the center, and the light was a circle. So there was a hollow center to it, and there were these two circles. And they were alive in the sense that they were moving as Roshi moved. As Roshi moved forward, the circles followed him a little bit. It didn't last very long. It just maybe a brief period.
Okay,
with a few steps.
Now, is this when he was alive or after he died?
Oh, absolutely. No, he's physically there in front of me. No, he's when he was alive. And
what's he doing walking into the Zendo in front of you?
I don't know that. I can't remember anything like that. I don't know that. He was right there in front of me, and that's all I don't remember the why of anything. And I don't remember perfect. I remember it was dark. I remember it was dark, and I remember it was what I said pretty much. It was these.
Okay.
These
okay. Now I understand. I would say either when he came into the Zendo, he would be followed by his Jisha, and
right,
and everybody else would be seated, except maybe somebody standing by the drum or something like that. I would say it'd be more likely that you were seated and saw these circles.
Nope, standing, walking right behind him. That was just, I was not seated. I was walking. Or no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I was walking. I mean, I was standing. I know that much, and I know that he was walking, and I knew that, and I was behind him.
Huh.
And he was moving forward. He was moving forward, and I was moving forward. And what you just said about the drum, that kind of makes sense to me. It might have been something like that, where he was, because like you say, he would be typically followed by the other, following the I forget the name of the person, but the role that person played. But it was him, and he was right in front of me, and blah blah.
Yeah, okay.
But it was a completely lovely experience, and I wasn't stoned. I mean, it wasn't one of those things that there was no justification for it other than the sense of magic that it presented. There was no other, possible. I mean, I absolutely was completely sober and completely alive.
I'm sure.
I mean, I was, and it was so great. It was so lovely to have. It was like a gift, it was, and Esalen, what Esalen did for me, Esalen opened up a lot of sort of psychic places for me. When you do all this, when you do a lot of the sort of the provocative psychological studying and acting we did, the psychodrama and delving and doing Gestalt therapy and really, really getting into the here and now in a very vigorous way. Esalen gave me permission to be far more alive and awake in a here and now moment way than I had ever experienced. And so I think my contact with Roshi was very much aided by the fact that I had just been kind of torn apart and opened up, having lived at Esalen for a couple of years and totally devoted my soul and spirit to it. I mean, I was like really, really committed to whatever Esalen had to give me. And what it gave me was a lot of it gave me a lot of permission to have an inner life in a way that I'd never had as a other younger person, and not since, for that matter. I mean, it gave a lot of permission for validating the sort of inner signaling of the self, the inner signaling of what you felt and what other people. And it also made me very sensitive to other people in a way that I'm not since then either. I mean, I'm now much more closed off and I don't have that kind of. But I mean, I could use. I mean, I was one of those people that could see colors around people, and I wasn't on drugs. I mean, I was looking at radiances that people had. So that the fact that I saw Roshi's footprint was not all that difficult because I already in a gentler, softer kind of way fairly regularly saw the radiances around people's bodies. For that particular time. That I mean, I'm making that stronger than it is. It was a kind of sort of thing rather than it was something big deal. But it was when you do the energy work that we did, and you really, really look at people expressing their soul out to you in this crazy work that we did, there's something that comes out of people that's not there otherwise. There's a radiance that people have inside when they're literally telling the deepest truth that they can possibly conjure up and come up with, and they're doing it in a emotionally evocative way. It's amazing what people express, what their energy has available that in their everyday life is not there, or at least it's hidden anyway. And so if you do that day in and day out for a couple of years at a time, you get into a new place in the psychic world. Anyway, I'm just chattering, but
no, it's good.
Yeah. So anyway, So anyway, well, what else we talk about, David?
Wait. I have a couple of things to say.
Go ahead.
One thing I want to say is that I really appreciated Layla too.
Good.
And Katrinka and I lived in San Rafael for 2 years before we came to Bali, and I would sit. There were about 5 different Zen groups around, so I'd go sit in the morning. I'd sat with Steve Stuckey's, I think, Monday night group. And so I'd go sit with them, not it was once a week, these different groups. So I didn't get every group every week, but my favorite was Layla. I loved going and sitting with Layla over in, where was that? Larkspur? Yeah.
Larkspur.
Yeah. And, I liked it because I did not stay for the talks. It was, every group would have, you'd sit and then there'd be a talk that might go on for an hour. And I just couldn't do that. I just wanted to go sit and then go back home and get to work.
Sure.
But Layla, she'd just do a little reading for 10 minutes. So I'd stay for that. And it was my favorite. Going and sitting with Layla was my favorite. And also Layla did a lot of work for Cuke Archives, and she transcribed. There were about 30 tapes discovered a few years ago with Suzuki Roshi lectures, and she transcribed one of them right before she died. I didn't realize she was sick,
Right.
And also,
it came on fairly quickly. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it did. It did.
Yeah.
But anyway, I loved Layla. But she did a lot, on Crooked Cucumber. She did a lot of transcribing.
Well, it doesn't surprise me because she talked about kind of generally stuff like that, like that part of what her work in the world was to do stuff like that, and so. You got the benefit of what seemed to be a pattern that was kind of who she was.
Oh, she was corporate secretary quality. She could type like 130 words a minute and not make any mistakes. And really, she transcribed a lot of my interviews.
Wonderful! Well, you're lucky to have her, I'm sure.
Yeah, and who else did a lot of them was Liz Twomey.
That doesn't surprise me. I mean, does Liz also had a orderliness about her.
Liz,
in terms of,
she did perfect work.
Yeah.
She did perfect work. And, she's doing all this work for me, and she's my ex. That's good, too. We got along really well. After Liz and I broke up, I'd say the first 5 years, she was sort of mad at me. And after that, we were very, very close. And
had you gotten to be too David for her?
It's complicated. I don't want to get into it.
Okay, no, that's fine.
She did. She kicked me out. There was the second time she kicked me out, and I just didn't come back. And she wanted me to come. I wouldn't come back. And I got together with Elin in that time, and we were together. Liz and I were together like 9 years, and Elin and I were together more like 16. And Katrinka and I were starting next year will be our 20th year.
Okay.
And anyway, but Liz did perfect. Liz, I remember one time I said, well, I'm going to go take a walk down on the beach. She said, well, I'll come join you. I said, well, you're playing a Mozart concerto tonight. You're playing the piano part. Or she was And she said, well, I'm just going to go over it quickly. I said, aren't you worried about making mistakes? And she said, I don't make mistakes. And remember, you probably remember Sam Keene and
of course
Jan Keene, his wife. Well,
sure.
Jan played like flute or something, and I got them together. And the first time they played, I was there, and Jan said, what do you do if one of us makes a mistake? What do you do if you make a mistake? And Liz said, I don't make mistakes. And Jan said, oh, good, I don't either.
Really? How about
and
that?
I heard, it was incomprehensible to me.
I never actually. It's so long ago. I don't remember. I remember Jan played a flute, but I don't remember how good a musician she was. But I didn't get a chance to hear Liz play maybe but once or twice. I mean, somehow that was not part of what my chances of being in her presence was. I mean, I guess I had a lot more. The only time I really had a lot of time with her was just sitting. That was what that was.
Well, that's
good. Of course,
good.
she's busy, but she's being a mom. Of course, was busy being a mom a lot of time, and being Mrs. Okamura.
Yeah,
and all that. Yeah. Did you get on well with Arthur?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh good. Oh good.
Yeah, Arthur was very quiet. I regret that I didn't interview him. But no, Arthur was very nice, very quiet. Opposite of me, I'd say.
Right.
I'd say,
quite,
I'd say to Liz.
Quite different, yeah.
I said to her, oh my God, I've just been talking. We're driving to the city. She'd say, oh, that's okay. I lived with a man who would drive to the city and we'd see each other and drive back home and never one word. And so she anyway, I want to know, like your way-seeking mind story, like where do you come from?
Well, okay. I grew up in Minnesota, a suburb of Minneapolis.
Oh.
And of course, Liz, it's speaking of Liz, is that apparently Liz told me one time that something about her mother. Her mother knew my grandfather, who was a famous lawyer. And somehow it was one of those strange things. From her Minnesota days, she mentioned this one time to me. She said, well, you're the grandson of this famous lawyer. And of course I am. My grandfather was really quite a remarkable powerhouse of a lawyer and well known and well regarded in the Minneapolis area. So anyway, my father was his son, and my father was a jock basically. He was a captain of the squash racket team at Dartmouth College and Yale Law School, and kind of at that level of everything. And so I was the son of a person like that, and I was pretty much of a big failure in terms of neither being a sports person or being the kind of student that's likely to go to Dartmouth or Yale Law School. But at any rate, so I grew up in this family where it was a class-based. It was the New England kind of class-based. My mother was a Connecticut Yankee from Hartford, Connecticut, and they were kind of elite. They were kind of part of the local elite of the town that I grew up in Wayzata, Minnesota, and I didn't fit that profile very much in terms of having anyway. So I was kind of a bad kid, you might say, in terms of I got into a bunch of trouble, and I was in every so often the cops would arrest me for doing something or other. And then my parents were divorced, fortunately, for I think both of them. And then I went to the University of Minnesota and kind of went to the University of Minnesota. I mean, I kind of stumbled along with it. And then And then I had a Sunday school teacher who turned me on to Esalen, and she said to me,
"Oh my gosh!"
It was amazing. So she said, "Well, here, you might be interested in this." And there 1965 actually.
Oh.
And so she handed me this brochure, and in the brochure was this. There's a man named Jim Bugenthal who's now passed, but he was doing a workshop called The Search for Authenticity. And I just, my mind latched at that, and I went, the search for authenticity. Now, but there's a good idea, And so I went, gosh, I should go check that out. And she encouraged me to do that, and so I did. And I went to Big Sur and met people, and then they said, well, you're not really advanced enough to come be part of our thing, so maybe later, maybe later. Well, so
how
later
old were
came
you?
And 1967, I was 23 maybe. Yeah, anyway, so I got into a VW bus like everybody did in 1967, not knowing that it was going to be the 60s. I didn't know what the 60s, and I didn't, but I got in this Volkswagen bus and I drove to Big Sur. And then I just kept being there often enough so I got a job there, and then I totally, enmeshed myself into the scene and lived on the property and just totally devoted myself to being a seminar participant. And I was on I did everything from wash the towels to be on the massage staff to this and that. And you meet a lot of famous people. I met the Beatles came, and then there were those kind of people, and then there was Joni Baez and doing the famous Big Sur musical festival, that kind of thing. So we had all that kind of stuff going on, but I was completely, totally dedicated to being on the journey of self learning and in discovering of the inner self, you might say. And Fritz Perls was a remarkable Gestalt therapist and the founder of Gestalt psychology, or not psychology, but Gestalt therapy. And so I did a lot of that. But after a couple of years of that, you can't keep doing that forever. And so then I went on I was invited to be a teacher, actually, to take some of the Esalen message to the world, so to speak. And so I ended up traveling to New England, and I was hired to do these workshops where I would do the things we used to do at Esalen, basically. And then I got an invitation to go to be a teacher at Yale for about a year. And I had a class there that I did for about the Esalen work. And then I went, that's crazy. And then it was completely absurd, because there I was talking about the here and now and talking about basic Buddhist principles mostly. And I had no background, absolutely no scholastic background at all. And yet I was living the sort of experiential essence of it anyway. And so people were apparently somewhat touched by what I did. But anyway, I after I did that for a year, I went, I don't want to do this anymore. And I came back to California, and somebody turned me on to Esalen, to Espinay, to Art Carpenter. They said, well, you should go visit him. And I walked into Art Carpenter's studio, and it was like being in a Zendo. And I went, oh, this is cool. I like this. This is a nice place to be. So he put a piece of sandpaper in my hand, and here's do it this way. So I did an apprenticeship with Espinay for a couple of years. And then
I think we should say what he did.
Well, Espinay was became a famous woodworker. He was a classical in the sense of California modern, artistic walnut individually designed furniture, and he was part of a big show at the Renwick Gallery, the Smithsonian in Washington D.C., with a guy named Wendell Castle and George Nakashima, and there was one other guy, I can't remember his name, but anyway, Espinay Art Carpenter was one of the regarded as one of the four great sort of natural wood artistic furniture makers. And so I was there to pack up the show and, help get the pieces ready and so on like that. So, I got a chance to be, and he was just a wonderful person to work with.
Yeah. And, he was, I really liked him. What I remember about his work, and I liked going over there, was, it was very, it was not dependent on straight lines and right angles.
Right, absolutely. No, he was not a straight line and right angles kind of guy. Absolutely not. No, and the thing was that was true of all of that group that he was part of. There was the world of craftsmanship, high level, the sort of stuff that shows up at the Smithsonian. This was actually a very, very, very refined kind of primal expression of woodworking craftsmanship that was very bendy and anyway, I don't know how to say about it, but it was nice stuff. And at the same time, a lot of his chairs weren't very comfortable, and so but I loved him, and it was so fun when he later, when I became a doctor and was busy doing other things, that I got a chance to come back and work with him a little bit on when he was putting together his magnus opus, his book that described his work, and was filled with photographs, and I had the fun of in a very, very, very small way, being part of that process, and that was really very gratifying.
What I remember about Art is that you tell me, I think this is him. He would have people come work with him, but I think they had to pay at first.
Some did, but people like me, we paid with our time.
Yeah, but
money.
Then he'd pay them back.
Later,
he'd pay them back with their work. But he had
then later.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I don't think that pay part lasted very long, to be honest. I think that mostly it was like what I did. People would just sort of show up and be serfs, but there was a period there where the Bolinas Craftsmen's Guild was operational, and Tom D'Onofrio and other people who wanted to commercialize and to basically make a living in this kind of crazy craft world, which turns out it's pretty hard to make a living in that zone. And Art was skillful at that. And so part of what he gave to the world, in addition to his charming self and his craftsmanship, was the sense that it could be done, that you could actually be an artist and you could do your own thing, whatever it was, if you paid the dues and learned how to market yourself. And so he helped people, cross that barrier of starting, when they start with a craft, whatever they're doing, whether it's jewelry or, in his case, of course, more furniture, and then he would show them or inspire them to make it possible for them to sell pieces to make a living, which was a very, very wonderful thing.
Yeah. So now, how does this path lead to you being at Tassajara?
Well, Roshi came to Esalen, and so I met Roshi first the time at Esalen, and he was there, and so was Lama Govinda was there, not at the same time, but we were there where people would come, and Roshi was one of the people that came, and so I sat with him there, and I had already begun a sitting practice with a group at Esalen, so it was completely normal for me to go and check out the Zen priest, kind of thing. And I remember thinking of him in a warm, pleasant kind of way. I wasn't particularly profoundly impressed, but I thought his presence was very attractive in the sense of it being honest and honorable, and definitely a practitioner. he was definitely the real thing. I mean, is what it felt like to me. He was a he wasn't just he was. I mean, there were a lot of people who would come to Esalen, and they had a song they were singing, and it was a perfectly good song, all right. But they were busy just singing a song, whereas Roshi was living the song, and it was he was so very real that and then of course we used to walk over from I didn't do it, but a lot of us from Esalen did that. We'd walk over from Big Sur over to Tassajara, and then they'd sit Tangario and do those things, and so. But anyway, so as soon as I left Esalen, and then I didn't want to go. And Esalen wasn't where I wanted to be anymore. But I wanted to go spend some time with Roshi, so I did. And in the summertime, it used to be that you could just go be a student and just spend the summer there.
Yeah.
Which was cool. I mean, it was. You had to, I forget what the money situation. There was some money involved, I think, but it wasn't enough to be a problem.
Yeah.
So,
I can tell by reading old interviews, that, but it got to be where if you came in the summer, you didn't have to pay because you were working to run the guest season.
Right.
But at first, people would pay maybe, I don't know, $1 a day or something. I don't know what, $2 a day. And people would pay for practice periods. They'd pay for their practice periods by working in the summer, or and it was a very small amount. And actually, the guest cabins, when we opened up in '67, it was like $8 a night or something in a cabin, and 12 in the stone room or something.
Right.
I can't remember. It was so low. Now, since COVID, everything changed so much that they couldn't staff a guest season. They tried as hard as they could, but things have changed. Back in the 60s, it was more communal. And we were very society oriented, and we wanted to be part of society and do things, and we'd do things for free, and we'd help each other out. These days, it's more, people are career oriented, and, it's less, anyway,
it's corporate. It's corporate. It's corporate. I mean, it seems to me, it's corporate, it's just, and it's a very, very different attitude.
But it's not all coming from Zen Center. It's coming from society. It's coming from the way people are in society, are the people who are coming there. And they couldn't keep the guest season going. Excuse me. So, this is like starting 2 years ago when they reopened up after COVID. Right. And now the whole summer is these teachers come with students, and they have a period there where they fit into Tassajara and the Tassajara rules and schedule, and they have their own workshops or whatever, and they're paying $120 a day.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. That's
the
I can't conceive that.
That's the business model, and of course it makes perfect sense. It's a beautiful location, and of course it's for those of you and me and a lot of people, you probably more than me, we love that place, in terms of taking care of it and fixing it and cleaning it and painting it and doing all those things. So it's had a lot of hands-on love, and it on top of a really lovely, lovely location. So there's been a big investment has been put into that place, and so it makes perfect sense that they would then, financialize its potential to support the larger picture of city center and the various things that they do, and so it's, and also the zeitgeist is, we're in a different time now. This is such a different time than when I was there. When I was there, the zeitgeist is such a different deal. So
in Japan, in India, in Thailand, you don't pay to be in a temple,
Right.
or you
Right.
don't pay for any practice thing. There was a Catholic. There's a couple of Catholics in Tamil Nadu, I remember, that were running like meditation centers, and they had small charge. And the Indian woman I knew, who was in, she's been a priest in Zen Center, and she's got ashrams in Tamil Nadu. She was just outraged that they would charge anything for anybody. But if you don't have a base of support from a lay community like they do in those countries, you can't do it. You've got to generate the money from the practitioners. Zen Center has both. Zen Center has both, but it really, just how to keep things open. But, they have so many, it's so top heavy in terms of administration, and they pay so much to professionals. I never paid anything. If I needed, when I was running director of Tassajara, if I needed advice from a lawyer, we had a good relationship with a very prominent lawyer. We'd give him bread, Tassajara bread. I've got so much help free, but it's different now. I don't know why I got into all that. Really, what I want to hear.
Well, but you know that you're talking to me, and you know that I know the feeling of what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true.
We both know that precious moment that we had, where we were getting a chance to live that sort of almost magical way in terms of being able to gift back and forth with each other and support each other in a way that was, that isn't so available to us anymore, and is like I say, isn't part of the zeitgeist. Isn't what people are doing.
Yeah.
So anyway, but and of course the thing is, for you and me, I suspect there's a certain sadness about that, because of course part of what when you listen, you probably know Peter Coyote.
Oh yeah, very well.
And yeah, sure. And Peter talks about how, the pretty much the sadness of having all that go away. He's written about it and talks about it periodically, and has really given a voice to that period of time that you and I are talking about, where it was possible to really live in a world where the gifting of things back and forth was his, of course, was the digger thing. That was his. He wasn't so much part of this. Although he's now much more part of the Zen world than he was then. But his was that digger thing, which is very, very big about giving things and having no money involved and so on. Yeah. But anyway, well, David, what more do we need to do with each other?
All right. Tell me about the getting the stone up to the hogback ashes site. What's your tell me about that?
Well. Okay. Well, I don't remember. It was so funny because Roshi Mel one time he said, well, I was the one that took that rock up from the bottom. And I looked at him and I said, Roshi Mel, you didn't do that, and anyway, because Mel was up there at the top with Dan and a couple of other people. When Bob Walter and I had spent, I don't know if it was weeks, however long it was, with this machine, anyway, it was a thing with chains and
it was a gasoline driven winch.
Yeah, exactly. A gasoline driven winch. Anyway, so when I got there, Bob was already, I'm not sure this is true, but I don't remember. I got there and the stone was pretty much there at the bottom of the hill. And so then there was the gas driven winch, and it was Bob and me. And we spent a lot of time wrapping chains around that stone and moving the winch, and then moving the stone, and then moving the winch, and then wrapping the stone again, and then starting it up and pulling that sucker up the hill. And it was so funny because we got just to that moment. We got to the lip, and there was Mel and Dan and some other folks. They were busy. They had their robes on. They were busy being important, and taking pictures of themselves and things like that. And it was so funny because that was obviously the crowning moment. Getting to the top of that. It wasn't that far, but it had taken a long time and a lot.
Oh, it's pretty steep.
A lot of work. And then they didn't want us to. I mean, I can't remember this perfectly, but it seemed like we were. The serfs were no longer involved. We didn't belong on that level place where you get to the top there. We had done our job, and then we should sort of skulk away somewhere and not be part of the celebration of the stone arriving. I remember it was so funny. And Bob and I we just both looked at each other and laughed and just walked away, and it was no problem. But it was an adventure, and it was funny when I was reading what Bob had said to you. He said that when we worked for Francis Coppola on his I don't know if you remember, but
yeah, I do remember.
But Bob had said that he got it wrong. He told the story wrong. What it was his pals were the workers at Francis's home. There was a bunch of hippies, basically.
This was a home. I was there because I came and visited. It was like in Pacific Heights.
Pacific Heights, exactly. And it was I can't think of the name of the guy who was. It's almost there in my head, but I can't. Anyway, but Bob knew those guys, and then somehow, because Bob and I had been around each other before, and he'd come out to visit me, I think in Bolinas, he said, "Well, come on, work with us in the city." And so then I got hired on, and he said the way he said it to you, he said, "I showed him how to be a plasterer." That was not it at all. He got me into this group thing, and then I became the plasterer. And I don't know what he did. I don't think he had anything to do with the plastering. I think he did other tasks. But anyway, he told the story from my perspective. He told you the story wrong, but it doesn't surprise me because Bob was a little loose with things. And so anyway, I'm sorry to hear that he died because I was hoping to see him one more time in his life because he was a pleasant man.
Oh, he was great. Yeah, I loved him.
Yeah. Oh, he was wonderful. Yeah, great.
Yeah. That house, the work being done in there was extremely high quality. If you were doing plastering,
right.
it had to be perfect.
Well,
that's what I remember.
Well, yeah. Well, okay, that was the fantasy that we were operating on for sure, but the truth is that these people who were the craftspeople, and I mean the painters. I hung out mostly with the painters, not so much with the carpenters because I was a carpenter, but I found myself being the plasterer because and I had never done it before, but having worked for Espinay, our carpenter, I was good at finishing things. And so what the part of the plastering that I was doing, it wasn't starting from scratch with all the plastering, with all the it was mostly touch up. So basically I was just finishing the covering of it. And, but the thing is that the workers, there was this idea that we were doing this fancy fine level work. And to an extent, we just, but as there was this wonderful little Italian painter guy who was busy doing a very detailed, fine craft kind of, I forget what it's called, but he's painting things on wood to make it looks like it's wood grain, only it's not really wood grain because it's really painting, and then you put this striping stuff on it, but it makes it look like it's wood grain. But it's beautifully done, and so it's really quite elegant. It's really quite elegant. And he looked around at what we were doing, and he went, he sort of he held in a very humorous little Italian man kind of way. He looked at us like we were a bunch of bozos, and we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. And it was really fun to be around him and to watch what real craftsmanship looked like. We were just pretending. It was.
I remember somebody showing me some of the finished work, and they pulled the drawer out of a cabinet or something. It was, I think it was built into the house, what they were.
Right.
And they had finished nicely the inside workings that you don't even see. I remember that. Oh yeah. There was definitely that level of things going on too. I guess, and I'm not. It was a real mishmash. Let's just say that. There was fine work, but there was also a lot of. Anyway, this little Italian man that I was talking about. When I talked to him about my plastering work, he said, "Don't worry about anything above eye level." He said, "Don't worry too much about it," because that's not what I remember. Anything about eye level, it would all look very carefully being done.
It was. It was. I spent lots of time there, and Francis would come by, and he would snort and go through the place like a bull, and he brought over Gene Hackman when he was busy doing a movie with Gene Hackman, and I've got a door on my house here that is a door that came from the basement where I was standing next to that. It was one of those things that we took the door out because we were making some adjustment or something, and the door didn't need to go back, so I took the door home basically. And it was this beautiful redwood door that lives in my laundry shed now. But anyway, so yeah, Francis was he'd come over and he'd be angry a lot. He was under a lot of pressure. He had just finished the what were those movies about the gangsters?
Godfather movies.
The Godfather. He just finished the Godfather movies, and so everybody was wanting him for something or other, and so he would come over and sit on the stairs to the upstairs there, and he had these people just like fawning over him, and it was the strangest thing. And I fell in love with Ellie Coppola, his wife. She's a deliciously beautiful, wonderful woman, and his kids were nice, and one of his kids died actually in Europe in a famous boating accident. It was very sad. Gio, I think was his name, and his daughter, the gal who's now making films, she'd come and spend some time with us, and I can't think of her name just now.
Sophie.
But anyway,
Sophie.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. And she was this
Sophia,
charming little girl.
Maybe Sophia.
Yeah, Sophia, right. She was this charming little girl, but her mother just knocked my socks off. She was just incredible. She had an presence that just, wow. I could really see why Francis wanted to have her around her, because she was such her presence was just so present, and so she brought a grace to things. And and of course,
one thing I remember about that house is there was a room when I was there. I think I was only there once. There was a room where a bunch of personal possessions were thrown, and his Oscar.
I was in that room. I was where the Oscar was. Yes, I was there. I know.
There was an Oscar for the movie Patton.
There you go.
Just lying on top of some clothes or something.
Right. I was in that room, and I held that Oscar too.
Well, I didn't hold it. Sure. I just remember looking at it. Okay, I want to go back to the stone on the hillside, which all this is an aside from. And what year do you remember?
Don't remember. Don't have any idea. I'm not somebody that remembers years.
Okay.
I don't have no memory.
Well, I've got memories from Bob Walter, from Mel Weitzman on this, and from Dan Welsh, and from Jeff. You remember Jeff Sherman?
Yeah. Well, those guys would one of them would know. I mean, for sure. Dan would probably know,
Well, I've already.
and Mel.
Well,
Mel, of course, is
each
dead.
person knows what. All I know is what each person
Right.
says.
Yeah.
People's memories are different. Jeff
Absolutely.
Sherman was doing the stone wall up top.
Okay.
In
okay.
behind the ashes site. All
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Now here's Dan's story, and Dan, I find to be the most reliable person in terms of memory and detail.
Okay.
He said that stone,
right,
he had discovered up creek, the small creek, up beyond the entrance where the gatehouse was built. About 200 feet up, and he took Suzuki Roshi to go see it, and Suzuki Roshi loved it, and they were thinking of it as a stone for his garden. So then, then Dan's bunch of people they dug it out, but they kept digging and digging and digging, and it turned out to be this massive stone that was incredibly beautiful. And he took Suzuki back, and Suzuki said, that he wanted it to be his. I use the word headstone.
That's a good word.
Headstone is an official word for a gravestone, but since it's not a grave, I don't like to use gravestone for, it's an ashes site. So then they forgot about it, and because there was no need for it at the time.
Right.
But then after Suzuki died, Dan remembered that, like in 1972, the year after he died, and Dick Baker, wanted to get the ashes site up there, which had no ashes. Yeah, maybe Trudy's. I think the Suzuki had put Trudy's up there. Trudy Dixon. So Dan remembered that stone. And so he went and looked for it, and such heavy rains in the winter had come that it was completely covered up, and they couldn't find it. And it took a long time, just him and other people digging around, and they finally located it and dug it out, which was a big job. And
you bet.
And then got it out of there with the power wagon and chains and stuff, and got it on top of the car. People say the car hood, but I think it might have been the top of a car. But either a car hood or a truck hood. That a vehicle that had been.
I think I remember this. I think I remember the metal you're talking about.
It's the sled. Well, it's the sled you took it up the hill on.
Exactly.
And so they brought it, in down the road, and it took a long time, to get it to the bottom of the hill. And Jeff Sherman was up there working on the wall, and he remembers this sort of eerie scraping metallic sound filling the valley as it inched its way forward, being pulled by the power wagon. And so then you and Bob, and I think someone else was involved, got it up top.
Well, I when I got there, it was at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
And Bob and I took it from the bottom of the hill to the top of the hill.
And you don't remember anybody else with you?
I mean, people would come by and look at us and laugh about it, or not. They'd laugh, but they'd come by. In other words, this moving of stone was a heartfelt ritual of an honored teacher kind of thing.
Right.
So the moving of the stone itself was a Zen practice something. It was regarded as not just a gardening project. It had more bang to it. More potency to it. So people would come by and look at what we were doing. But in terms of who actually wrapped the stone and put the chains around it and moved the machine, and that was me and Bob. And that's what the fun I had with Mel was. When Mel had claimed to be the one who had taken it up the side of the hill, I had taken pictures of Bob and I and the stone and the chains and the whole thing. So I sent these pictures to Mel, and Mel said, maybe I didn't remember that quite accurately. Well, he didn't.
No.
And that was fine. I mean, I didn't care, but I had the fun because I liked Mel, and it was fun to sort of josh him about it. But Dan, the thing that you're telling me now, which is new to me, which I wasn't in touch with. I didn't realize that Dan had so much to do with the getting it to the bottom of the hill part of it. Because I remember when we got it to the lip of the very top of where we were going, it was Dan that was right there, taking charge basically, and being the big shot that he was about the stone. But now I understand how it was that he was the big shot, because he had been so instrumental in terms of getting that whole thing moving.
Well, I don't think he necessarily. I think he orchestrated it. He wasn't necessarily the one driving getting it from the creek. I think he was involved, but Dan said there were a bunch of people, getting it involved and getting it there to the bottom.
A lot of people involved. But the thing is that Dan had a certain authority to be in charge of what it was that when Bob and I got the stone to the lip of where we were going, that Dan was there. I mean, I can just see it in my mind's eye. I can see Dan's reach. It was so interesting to watch these guys. I don't remember Melts much, but I do remember Dan just vividly. I remember Dan. He's actually throwing not throwing, but his body's leaning over, and there's that moment where you're just getting the lip up over the where you get to the flat spot up there, and Dan is like right in the middle of it, and I just remember the authority. I'm putting a word on it, but I mean, he was in charge of what it was happening. I mean, in terms of taking credit. No, not taking credit. He was taking pleasure. I think that's what I really. He was there on purpose, and there was something important that was happening.
Well,
and that Dan was, Dan was there doing what was so funny for Bob and me is that, at least I can't speak for Bob, but for myself we had just been busting our butt, to get that thing up there, and then to have these guys come along and just pretty much push us out of the way and take up that last little bit to get up over the lip. That was, I thought it was, I thought a little, I was probably offended with it at the time, but I was also amused, because it was for me, it was emblematic of some of the upstairs, downstairs power things that Zen centers seem to have going on.
Yeah, well, all groups have that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, all group. Yeah, yeah. And so we were the serfs, and Dan was part of the power group.
Yeah.
And that was okay. But so anyway, but I'm glad to get the story that you've added to my story, which was that I didn't, because I didn't remember where it had come from, or I didn't. I mean, I think I knew at the time, but I had since forgotten that kind of how it got to where it started with Bob and me, but yeah, it was fun. I have to admit, it's like one of those things in life that you've done that sort of in your memory kind of is one of those moments where you go, it's one of those magical things that happens in life, and that I feel lucky that I was privileged to honor Roshi by dragging that stone up the side of that hill. I mean, it felt good to me to do that. it felt good to me to honor Rishi that way and to give my life to it at that moment in time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Dan and Reb, now this, Dan and Reb were the ones, according to Dan, that positioned the stone up top.
I can believe that. I can believe that.
He said they spent days on it. I
can believe that.
First, probably Jeff. Dan doesn't remember who did it. Jeff doesn't remember if he did it.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I asked him. But anyway, had to build it like a 1 foot cubic hole.
Right.
That the stone would go over and then leave about an inch diameter, whatever, exposed for the ashes to go in.
Right.
And Dan said they used a 10-foot tripod and.
Yeah, I remember. No, it was a production. Absolutely a production.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. What did you do to protect the stone from the chains?
We didn't. I don't think we did anything. I think the stone was just stony enough that it didn't care.
Really?
I don't think we. No, I don't think we did anything.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. No, it was. I mean, it's a long time ago, but it was. Let's see. I'm trying to picture it in my mind in terms of what. I mean, I'm 99% sure that we didn't do anything at all. We just wrapped the chains around that thing.
Yeah.
And and every so often we'd pull it for a while, then it would roll back some, and it was an ordeal.
Yeah, Bob says, in his account, Bob says when you're right up at the top that the chain broke, and you're terrified instantly, of course, that the sled was going to slide down to the bottom,
right.
But it didn't move. Also, Jeff Sherman said you all were putting a heavy, what do you call it? Like a piece of like round wood or something. What do you call it? A stake, a heavy stake behind the stone. When you'd move, he said you'd move it like a foot, and you'd get something and put it behind it, drive it into the ground.
I'm not sure of that so much. I think that. Well, I mean, I don't remember that part, but I remember certainly when it was up over the lip and then on the flat area up top there, that then one of the ways that it got moved around during and amidst the tripod thing and all that stuff. I mean, there was a bunch of sticks that would be, cozying it along, and then in terms of to keeping it from sliding back down the hill when we were still on the angle of the hill, I don't remember it seemed to be what, if my memory tells me, is what we did is when we got done for the day, we would just be sure that it was wrapped. In other words, after all, the machine, the winch was tied to something up above. And so that the winch would be on the upside, the rock would be on the downside. That's where we would leave it. So that the rock was always, was covered with chains, and as long as the winch was secure and tied firmly, then it wouldn't slide down. So I don't know that.
Okay,
we wouldn't necessarily.
All right, maybe Jeff was talking about it. Wasn't clear. I can just call him back up, but maybe he was talking about. How they were moving it up top, that they were putting a stake into the ground and then using it. In fact, he did say something like that as a fulcrum or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. And that would make perfect sense. I mean,
that's what it was.
That's kind of how you do that shit,
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. But look, now, you're saying, Mel remembered it wrong. I spent a lot of time on Mel's book that just came out on the 12th of December.
Oh, really?
And I had spent a lot of time going over it, maybe 5 days or something,
okay.
and sent 250 corrections and suggestions in on it. He got everything wrong. It was just unbelievable. And Alan Sinaka, who was in charge of I shouldn't say everything. He had the wrong person doing the wrong, and so many things and also the book had not been carefully copy edited or now it reads great. The Counterpoint did a good job with it.
I mean, I got the impression about Mel. I didn't think that Mel he just wasn't a detail man.
That's right. He wasn't. And neither was Suzuki Roshi. Suzuki.
Yeah, right.
God.
So it doesn't really matter.
No. The spirit's good. The essence is good. But he gets so many things wrong. Well, one thing that Mel said that he and Suzuki Roshi set the stone in place. Well, Suzuki Roshi had died a year or two before. You know,
he's full of shit. Yeah. Mel. I remember talking to Mel and correcting him. You know, in terms of correcting his memory. I remember how unconcerned he was. It didn't matter. You know. It just didn't matter, and I agreed that it really didn't matter. And part of the fun of catching him on it was that Mel was so cheerful about the whole thing, and I was cheerful about it. I didn't care. I mean, it didn't really matter. It was water over the dam, but he accepted it. That that was different. So it was just for me. It was a fun moment with Mel, basically, to just kind of josh him a little bit and say, no, Mel, you don't. You're getting older. I mean, I'll say that, but I mean, I just had fun. I had fun with it, and Mel made it helped me have fun with it too. So,
yeah. Like
was
nice.
Tell me.
Wait a minute. I was worried. I was dying to see how many of the corrections they'd included with the book, because I never heard back from them. I never heard anything. No thanks. No nothing. No money.
Who did the book? Who did it?
Counterpoint.
Oh, okay.
And Jack Shoemaker. They do Gary Snyder.
Okay,
anyway, so like one thing they left in was that Mel said when they'd come in on the way to Tassajara, they'd stop at there was this Indian elder, Fred Nason, with son, Little Bear. Tommy Nason.
Okay.
I think he just used Little Bear. I don't know if he used Tommy. But Mel had a relationship with Tommy later, like in the 70s and maybe 80s, where they'd do workshops together. And Mel would do the Zen and Little Bear would do the Indian stuff. But he had it that we were coming into Tassajara back then and dropping off at the Nasons to visit, and that Nason would give people beer, maybe, and he specifically said that I really liked getting a beer from him. I had never even met Nason back then. It wasn't Nason's we were stopping at, it was Bill Lambert's. And Nason, I don't think, Nason was an Indian elder. I don't think they were drinking alcohol. I don't think they were handing out beer. Anyway, I pointed that out, but they left it in that way, and it didn't matter.
Right, it doesn't matter.
Although there will be a place on Cuke.com where there's comments in there. But one thing he had said is that the first practice period, there was a session at the end of the first month. He said it was 4 days. I thought it was 5 days. And he said Kobuncino led it. And I said, no, Kobuncino didn't lead it. Maizumi led it. Kobuncino wasn't leading any sessions then. Maizumi had been in America. He'd already been in America 12 years in 1967.
Right.
And, he had a Zen group down in L.A. that was rather new. But so they included that change in the book. And overall, I really thought it was I really liked it. But there were so many things he got wrong.
Was the book fun? I mean, was it
oh, yeah.
fun to be part of it?
I don't like to read Zen books. I don't like to. I don't like to read any of that. I don't like. I don't like to read books about practice or anything really. And I have to read a lot of that stuff. I liked it a lot. It was very simple, very direct, and boy, he really got into Dick Baker. I'll tell you.
Did he really? Oh, good.
Oh boy,
good.
Did he?
I still I still find myself saying nasty things about Dick Baker, the pomposity of that son of a bitch. I just, that two shoes at the door story was just such such fun. I mean, I'm glad that, and it's funny. I saw Dick not too long. Actually, I saw Dick at Layla's something at Greenbelt.
Memorial service. I was very sorry to miss.
I saw Dick there, and it was so fun in a way because I had been carrying this thing about Dick Baker, and when I saw Dick and I saw how life had cost him. I mean, how the way he carried himself and the way he was and his sort of imperial nature kind of things. And I just felt this compassion for him. And I thought, I don't have to feel badly about Dick Baker anymore. He's paid his dues, and
that's right.
but I remembered him somewhat harshly, and I was nice to see him, like I say, at Layla's memorial, and just feel this none of that harshness at all. Just that it was Dick was still Dick, and it was fine, and I was also glad to see also that the way the whole system sort of still honored him in a way, the way he moved through Greencoast that day. That you could just feel there was a fellowship that he had with the whole thing that was pleasant to see, basically.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I wanted to join that on Zoom. It had been in the middle of the night, and I just couldn't do it that night.
It was sweet. It was as sweet as you would hope, and it was. And of course, the respect and the love that many people had for Layla was just so evident.
Yeah,
and there was the gardening gal. What's her name?
Wendy.
Well, yeah, Wendy. Wendy was one of the people, but she was just one of many who was just carrying this big Layla warm heart feeling, and she carried that into the room and carried that as she scanned around and greeted people and so on. It was just such a lovely moment, and of course those who loved Layla, and there was a lot of people there who loved Layla, and so it was. I was glad to have been there.
Yeah,
to say that. Yeah.
Well, I also, I've looked into some of the book is half Mel's lectures. And they're all real solid and good. And the thing is, he talks about how, about his problem with Dick. That Mel was very critical of Dick, even when he, when Dick was Abbott and Mel was in Berkeley and was on the board. Right. He'd call him out for buying expensive robes for himself and not even thinking about the others and stuff. But And then he talks about how he was sort of punished by, he was sort of ostracized and
Absolutely.
he felt ridiculed and everything. Well, look, there's another way to look at this. Mel and Les Kay in Los Altos and Bill Kwong in Sonoma, they had their own groups, and they were solidly entrenched in them, and all three of them did not have a good relationship with Dick. And Bill had left Zen Center actually when Suzuki was in Japan in 1963, and had started sitting in Mill Valley and only coming in for Saturday, and because of conflict with Dick back then, when they were just students, and he just didn't like the conflict. And but while Mel says, that he was, people weren't coming and sitting this and that, they bought a brand new building. There was all sorts of things happening with the Berkeley Zen Center that he talks about in other parts of it. And, Dick didn't want to let go of being abbot of Zen Center. Mel didn't let go of being abbot of Berkeley. He didn't pass it on to Alan Sanaka till, to right before he died, like a year before, or something like that.
Sure.
And so it's like warlords having their kingdoms and being, fighting with each other. But you know what? I wrote I posted about Mel's book yesterday, and I said, I'll put, and I just said, really good book, easy to read, and solid, and I said, I have some comments on it, but I'll post them later. I don't want to interfere with it now. I said, but I will say this, that the Berkeley Zen Center was my favorite Zen Center, and it still is. And that that if there was if there had been a vote on most popular Suzuki disciple, I think Mel would have won. Even at this time, he says he was being ostracized. Dick made him a permanent board member in that time. Anyway.
Well, there was a lot of strange shit going on, and it was difficult. I mean, it was difficult to absorb all that was happening there. So I mean, it's easy to see how things went as they did, and so I've got to move along, David. So I'm hoping that you won't mind that I have to say goodbye.
Well, wait a minute. Let me say one other thing here. The Zen Center, really, I'm most comfortable staying at and being there is Dick's in Germany. Our Creststone. Right? Oh, yeah. And but it's so it's interesting, right?
Right.
Well, look, Ned, we have covered a lot of territory. It's been really interesting.
Good.
But do you have any concluding anything to say in conclusion?
It was fun to josh about things that we know in common, and I'm happy. I'm happy that you seem to be having as much connection with the current things as well as the things in the past. So I mean, this business of Mel's book, things like that. I mean, you're still obviously part of the picture, and so I'm happy that that's happening. And you, in a way, I thought about you in terms of, there were times when it seemed like maybe you'd be an outsider in a way, but it sounds to me like you've been able to maintain your insiderness in a way that suited you. And so it just sort of proves that the way of the world doesn't creates space for all of us. And so there's space for you, and there's space for me. And
yeah.
And praise the Lord.
Yeah. Well, I was really pleased that you agreed to talk. I really wanted to hear what you had to say, and I really wanted to talk to you.
Well, fun.
And it's been great.
Thank you. Okay.
And
nice to visit.
Look, it'll be a couple of months before this goes up. I'm way ahead.
Okay.
And I put up one a week. And I'll let you know. And it's been
all right.
Great talking with you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you spending the time with me.
Yeah, you take care.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. So thank you very much, Ned Hoke. Appreciate it. Maybe I'll get back to Bolinas one of these days and say hi. But until then, this is DC Pubov, Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dog and Bandita Vilang Manis and dear lovely Katrinka, and we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.